Cupar was incorporated as a village in 1905. Since its inception, the town has had its share of both fire and natural disaster. As a result, the face of Cupar has altered drastically. Yet it will take more than fire to destroy the spirit of the pioneer and a firm belief in a better future. Many years ago, the residents of Cupar began the first steps that now provide our town with an unsurpassed beauty, an island of lush greenery surrounded by a patchwork quilt of rich and productive farmland. Well, the town was formed mostly by, I would say, English, Irish, and Scotch descent, because north of town, being hilly and stony, it wasn't settled until after the town came into being. There used to be at one time what they called the German settlement, and there was a Jewish settlement, there was a Hungarian settlement, and a Romanian settlement. The land north of here was all homesteaded, family on every half section of land. Having a valley to the south of us, a creek to the west of us, and a creek to the east of us, and two reserves, both north and south, has made this more of a center. Personally knew the man that owned the quarter section that the town was living on. But he said he was plowing this, on this quarter of land when a man from the CPR walked out to him and offered to buy this quarter section to put the town on it. I also understand it was one of the railroad men that named the town. You'll find the town of Cupar Desert and Mark Inch in Scotland. And he was a Scotchman, and they said it was him that named the town. The first train came through in 1906. Bed and the tracks were all laid, but the bridge work at Mark Inch Creek and Lipton was not complete until 1906. The station later burnt down and was rebuilt about 1940. Quite a big store down where the apartment block is there just south of the post office. Peckett's store. Real modern. When you went in and bought something, you gave the clerk your money and she'd put it in a little cart, take it, roll it over to the cashier. And it was quite a, well, when you were young, that looked like a real city store. This brick garage burnt down. It burnt down about 35, 36. But it was built about, I think, 1917. And I remember the night that fire happened, I happened to be coming to town with the team. It was in the wintertime, and I put them in the barn and I helped pull the fire engine down to the fire. Well, I would say the Union Bank building was built in 6 or around that. And they stayed until the Royal bought them out. And Hesketh himself bought what was Melder, Mellis, and Shepherd out in 1912. Called it the Hesketh, or the Munn building where the bakery was in. It burnt down. It was quite a loss to the town. That was built in 1930, and then the south part was built on. Used to be Chinese laundry right on that corner.
Bet you there's no pictures of that.
No. What is now the Anglican Church. and what is now the United Church were both built, I understand, in 1906. It wasn't called United then, it was a Methodist church. It was the United until 1925 when they joined the Union and the Presbyterian Church. In 1948, the United Church remodeled the church, moved it, just really turned it north and south instead of east and west, and added what is the choir loft and the entrance. Lutheran Church, quite a little history about it. Did start here in Cupar for a few years in the 20s and really is connected with North Cupar because they built a church up north about 8 miles out till they moved it into town here. The Anglicans has remained the same. As a kid, I can remember going to school and the Catholic Church was there, but it was remodeled I think in the 50s. And the old building is now standing beside the Legion Hall. During the war years, even the Second World War, the population was less than 300. I think pretty near a third of the town was in the forces. I think it was 73 or 75 from Cupar. I can't tell you offhand how many boys lost their lives in the war, most of them overseas all right. The original school area was called Harrington School District, and they changed it in 1907 to Cupar School District and had this half of school built, later completed to a 4-room school. The office for the unit or the school district was completed in 1920. We were using the Methodist Church for the primary school and the original schoolhouse, which sits on Main Street. They used it as school. It was known as the Shamrock Hall. That was the first plane that landed here at Cupar, just about where the clinic is now. That was Gene Hesketh that's sitting on the wing. We got a half holiday at school because it came in just noon hour. And a fellow named Ike Bricker that used to be here, the first man that ever drove to Regina in a car and was the first man that ever flew to Regina. He went back with them. Drugstore was there from before 1910. Ellen Stewart, Max Stewart, his dad built it, the doctor, and a man named Madden ran it till Max bought it out in the 30s. Nurse Scott came and used to go from home to home, if your mother was sick, she'd come and stay maybe a week or 2 weeks, or if somebody's having a baby, she'd go and look after the mother. It was built about 1918 or 19, and she ran it as a private hospital until she retired. When she died, she had in her will that the hospital board could buy it back, and we did, and used it as a hospital prior to '59 when the present clinic was built. Today it's a little different since the tractors come in, especially south of the town where men lived on the farm for the winter because they had to look after stock. Had to have horses, usually had a cow or two. But when the tractor came in, it freed them up for the winter, and that's when a lot of farmers moved into town and started to get bigger. With the same amount of implements and one thing and another, with the tractor you could do more work than with the horses. Yes, there used to be Imperial Lumber Yard for years, and then the Beaver was down on the other side of the street near the hotel there. and bought Imperial out and moved up on in that other building. But that burnt 1947. When the fire was there, the lumber agent manager, he just went in and took his books out and locked the door. Beaver Lumber built again. True value, it was a boarding house. And from there on, all the buildings have been destroyed. From Shannon's boarding house, as it was called, there was a store. Nugent had a store, later Corbett. Then there was a jewelry store. And later it became Planeto's Massey dealer and Imperial Oil. Then the lumber yard, and then the garage. Cyclone in '46 came through here. I think there's only was one elevator that didn't have some damage done. You have pictures there that showed the cupola off the farthest east elevator. And I think the west one was the driveway was completely taken off. I knew one of the agents was in the second, Pool B it was. He happened to be in the elevator when the cyclone hit, and he crunched down beside the engine in the office when the roof went off the office building. It came along just about supper time. Remember coming into supper. The storm was on, and after supper I put my cattle down in the pasture. I looked down and I could see some of the hotel. It was a heavy wind, but we didn't have the twister part. It came in from the southwest. Barn and granaries where Meade McSweeney's living now, and it was where the clinic is today. 5 granaries, I think, and the barn was across the track. Another barn or two. East barn went down and there was a cow in it. She came up through the loft floor. I used to have the telephone office here. I'd operated here for about 50 years. There was no dial phones then. It was all old ones that you had to crank, and we could always just... We got so that they were here so long, the Millers themselves, that they knew every phone and every ring, I think. You just had to phone up and say, "Oh, Mrs. Miller or Mr. Miller, get me so-and-so." Yeah. Until the dial came in, of course, had to be a central office, switchboard as they called it. Dial came in, I would think, about 1964 or 5. At the time, there was at least 4, maybe 5 private lines. Waterworks went in early 60s. Pavement, I guess, went in the 70s. Sports days used to be quite a big event in the town. Have horse races. Even they had a sports day for horse racing, and they used to race with horse carts and saddle or bareback. And then they usually had an agriculture fair for a number of years here. Used to show different livestock, and one of the things I did more or less as a kid, show a calf at the fair. You maybe made $5, you really was rich. Used to have quite a good band in those years. The very first rink was right next to a livery stable, just a board fence, as you'd say. It wasn't covered. And later they had a curling rink on the east side of it, and a park fence up for a skating rink before the 1911 rink was built. Curling was quite an active game here. Everybody was involved in curling, especially when they had the Bondsfield on. Everybody in the community pretty near was on the rinks. Eddie Shore's father put quite a bit of money into that first rink, donated it to the town. Eddie used to get into the rink and put curling rocks on the skating ice, and then he would weave in and out and practice his hockey there. That's where he really learned it. Now this is a story I've always heard anyway. I can't say that I've seen it or anything like that, but I can remember talking about it, so I imagine it happened all right. Yes, I've seen 3 rinks. That was built in '54, the 2 rinks. The curling rink is what's used for the museum now.
Well, thanks a lot, Brock.
Well, thank you for putting up with me.
Oh, geez. Anytime you want.
I don't know whether it's anything that you can use or not, but I don't mind kind of reminiscing a little bit.